are
Hello. Hello.
live.
Hello.
Hello, Damien. Damien's in the chat already. He's talking about MC526127. What's that one about?
It's Whiteboard. So maybe we
No.
should talk about that. It's
Sure.
Whiteboard and Teams tabs.
Okay.
So it's going to be configurable
Mm.
via Teams app permissions. It doesn't change the meetings whiteboard stuff. It just changes for the... So if you do things like allow certain apps and block all others in an organization, then you're going to have to configure Whiteboard for that.
Right.
If you want them to use
Whiteboard and a tab.
tabs functionality.
I see.
Yep. So,
I wonder if that'll affect any other default apps.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, hopefully we'll get an update, but when it happens, maybe. But it says March 15th is when you can't do anything until March 15th anyway. Because the whiteboard will not appear as an app that you can configure until then. So we still got a couple days. I'm assuming that's March 15th Redmond time.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And I
So
guess
that's-
is that the cloud configuration for... that's where we'll be waiting for it to appear.
Yeah, you won't be able to pick the app, in the specific
Yeah.
apps selection. So that's MC526127.
Cool.
Yeah.
I do remember reading that, but I didn't take too much notice on the timing of it.
Yeah.
Let's just get rid of that overlay. Thank you for bringing that back to our attention, Damien. This is why we're in community. Shall we kick it off?
Let's do it.
All right.
Hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the 365 Message Center Show. I'm Daniel, and that over there is the standing Daryl. I was going to say
The standing Daryl, like
the
he's
standing
standing in
Daryl.
for Daryl.
No, it's that you're standing at your standing desk versus sitting like I am. If I had realized this before the show, I would have stood myself. But that's okay. I'm not jealous. I'm not at all. This is episode 276-ish, I guess, right?
There's a reason I'm standing, Daniel. It was an early start. The show, because you all over in the US have changed your clocks.
We have.
And so now you're an hour away from me, and the show was starting at 6 a.m. for me. But don't worry, when we change our clocks in April, it'll be a 5 a.m. start for me, unless I can negotiate something with my boss here about starting maybe at 11 o'clock. No, 1 o'clock, please, 1 o'clock. I don't want to get up at 3.
We'll see. Depends on how much money we make this month.
All right. Well, you know where to donate to allow Daryl some more sleep. That'll be Patreon / Daryl as a sleeping service.
Yes, nice. Yes, we have some good topics this week, Daryl. One that made quite a splash last week, and we'll be talking about which is Loop, and this Loop app that we've been promised for so long. And let's talk about the rollout and stuff like that. But first, we'll dive into a kind of a different thing, completely different than Loop, right?
A different thing.
Different.
Yeah. Let's get that going. Here we go.
So the first message that we really wanted to talk about today, and actually has relation to another message. So we'll talk about this message first. So this is SPO, which I always find it interesting how when they write these messages, sometimes they abbreviate things, and just assume everyone knows what it is. SPO stands for SharePoint Online. SPO site
what else
sharing.
it struggles to. Sorry to cut in, but
Yes,
when we
you totally
search though too, it's
Yes.
looking in that title. So I think this is a weakness of the message center when we're looking for messages you're not going to find SharePoint because it's not in the title.
No, search is probably, well, we won't criticize too much, but search is not great in the message center. So you're exactly right. We need those titles to be to spell out everything so we can make them available in search. This one, SPO, SharePoint Online, site sharing will now use Azure B2B Invitation Manager, MC525663. Now, in SharePoint Online, when you go to share a site to someone, right now it is using the same SharePoint invitation that it's been using for a while, which is it's handling it via SharePoint. And it's it says it in the message, SharePoint Invitation Manager. And so what's going to happen here in late March, so in a couple of weeks, is they're going to switch to using the Azure B2B Invitation Manager instead. And this is a good thing because they are really moving and focusing on using the Azure B2B, which gives you that capability of allowing people to use their credentials of where they are, the other authenticator, which could be, their own Azure environment, to authenticate, and it creates that guest in your environment. But they're using, going to be switching this, like I said, in a couple weeks, starting, and rollout will be end of April. And then as of March 31st, and this is another message, which is new tenants as of March 31st will have Azure B2B integration with SharePoint enabled by default. And that's MC526130. And that message basically it's very, very similar in saying, as of March 31st, if you create a new tenant, then it will automatically be using Azure B2B for SharePoint, which makes sense because they're coinciding. They're just letting you know if you create a new tenant, it's going to be on by default. So if you have any policies set up in your B2B invitation manager, and you go in, so you can go to Azure Active Directory and go in and check out your policies, because they're going to go into effect on anyone that's being invited into SharePoint sites as a guest. Okay, so check that out before it goes into effect, and that's how this little message affects you. Daryl, I think it is. I like the experience here with the Azure B2B. You get that one-time link to gain access. Send you an email and you click on it and you gain access and you go through that process. I think this is, it's good to standardize this, but as Andy says in chat, this feels like short notice. I think it is a little bit short notice. I actually don't know if it's going to affect too many people big, but that's a personal opinion. It may affect a lot of people in a negative way. I just don't know. But short notice, right, Daryl?
Yeah, I think if we want to be able to tell people expect to see a different looking message, that's probably the biggest impact. But you'll still be able to work with content that is being shared with you. Maybe admins have to manage it from a different place.
Yeah, yes, and I think that really what we're seeing here is that from your user experience, there's no change, right? So when I go to share, it's going to be the same experience. It's just the back end, really, that's handling that guest access is changing. So I think really what we need to understand here is how it's going to affect those people that we will be inviting. Yeah. So, can we move on? Unless, if you have some comments, throw them in the comments, or if you're watching us live, do it in chat, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. But let's move on to something that did get some. It's not the one that got all the attention, but it got a little bit of attention, which is the new Outlook for Windows.
Yeah. So this is more about Outlook, the new Outlook, also known as One Outlook. Oh, never mind. We've already got two One Outlooks. But anyway, yeah, so try the preview of the new Outlook for Windows. So this is the MC526128. It is a toggle which some of us have had access to already. We might have been on the insider preview for Office builds. And so that to get to that, you'd have to throw in a few commands and work your magic or have some help from an admin to do so. But this message is announcing that the preview switch will be available for current channel. And that means when it rolls out to organizations who have set to receive Office on current channel frequency, or individuals, then they're going to see that little switch up at the top. And let's remind ourselves what Outlook for Windows, or the new Outlook for Windows is. No screenshots. I just thought I'd build it up there and then say it's not in the message. You like that? If you want a
Such a
preview of
tease.
it, I know, but you can go to Outlook Web Access, or Outlook on the web, and you'll see something very similar. Uh, there's a furious few different things that you could take note of if you're wanting to turn that off and have a bit more control of it. Um, but I want to just go into something that Daniel and I were talking about, saying, well, okay, so what really is the difference between
Yeah.
Outlook Web Access and One Outlook? And the more information link at the bottom of this message will tell you about how to install it. There was somewhere down here. There it is. Support for key Outlook features is a really good table. So we'll just briefly take a look at this on a larger screen and blow that up. Okay, so good table here. Just take note of the first column. What is the experience in Outlook on the web? And the new Outlook for Windows. And as I track down things like pin email, snooze, my day view, it's all yes, yes, yes. Inbox rules, conversation settings, loop components, board view, hybrid RSV, confirm your attendance in person or virtually. We haven't seen that appear yet, but it's planned to appear
Right.
in,
It's
in
planned.
the new Outlook and in Outlook on the web. Support for Outlook.com. This is where it gets a bit lax, that it's not yet available in the new Outlook.
Which
Multi-account
is,
support.
for those on the audio podcast, is third party
Oh, right.
accounts like Gmail and Yahoo are not supported, but coming soon, quote unquote, for new Outlook for Windows.
That's right. Delegation, shared mailbox, offline support. If you really need to access your email from a Windows desktop offline, which there'll be some sectors of the industry that do need that. Yeah, it's not supported yet.
I think
And
that's
Daniel,
huge. That one's
that's what
huge.
you're really interested in.
Yeah, because I mean, when you start looking at these applications, for instance, Microsoft List came out with the desktop experience, which was that really it's just the same experience, but it includes offline access. That's the beauty of it, and it's really kind of a major focus if you're using Outlook on your desktop or laptop, whatever you're using Outlook. Then you're able to write emails and queue those up and
Yep.
and manage your calendar and all that without being online. And that's what's going to be needed for the new experience. Now, it is noted as coming soon that offline support for the new Outlook for Windows. So hopefully that soon is really soon. I won't be switching until we get that. So
Yeah.
I think that's probably a lot of people will be feeling the same.
Like when I mention industries, certainly one comes to mind that we've worked with before. The mining industry, or any kind of industry which is remote, doesn't have a lot of bandwidth and needs to, as you say, Daniel, download stuff, queue it up, and then send it off when bandwidth is good or when you're in range of bandwidth.
But this is getting that one big feature that I use Outlook on the web for. It's not the only one, but it's one of the highest ones is pin emails.
Right.
So we're going to be able to pin email to the top, and this is, for me, I need to take action on this today, so I pin it to the top. So
yeah, and nice. Mine is snooze emails. I use that a lot to say, look, get it out of my inbox and redeliver it to me tomorrow morning so I can check it out.
And is that a good way to do inbox 0? You can just go through and say snooze to everything and
defer my 0. That's right. Yeah. So let's get back to when that's arriving. Let's take a look at that. We have it, rolling out to current channel begins early April and to be complete late April. And monthly enterprise channel rollout will begin early May, complete in early June. Mm-hmm. And Daniel, let's talk about lists now.
Sure. This message is SharePoint. See, they can spell it out. See, this will show up in search. SharePoint, new list templates with approvals, MC525660. And with this, they're introducing 2 new templates for lists, but that's not the biggest thing here, really. It is a integration, the integration with approvals app in Teams. And it is that approvals app integration that is really the big thing here. So it is the 2 templates that you'll be able to create is the travel requests with approvals and content scheduler with approvals. Now, when you go in to create a list, just heads up, it is they show up at the bottom, at least for me. There's already this travel request list template, but it's not the same as the one that's at the bottom of the list of templates, which is with approvals. This will begin rolling out now-ish, and I'll tell you about my experience with it, to targeted release in late March. Will be finished with targeted release. Standard release early May, and expected to be completed by mid-May. So there's a month break they're planning here between targeted release and standard release. Just key point here, this is why you should never have your production tenant on targeted release. They're giving that month buffer there to work out problems. Anyway, I digress. There's a screenshot here that shows how this request approval should work. If you go in, basically you're supposed to be able to go in, select a list item and say submit for approval. I say this is how it's supposed to work because in my experience right now in my tenant that's targeted release testing, my test tenant, when I go to create a list from this template, it lets me fill it out and to go create. I click create, and this is for my lists, which that means we're storing in OneDrive, or on a team site. Both times when I click that, I get an error, and Daryl does too. He tested it out as well. I get an error on the list name. It says this list already exists, which it doesn't. I'll get to that in a second. But then at the top, there's an error on the same screen where you're creating the list. It says this is an experimental feature, blah, blah, blah. So basically it fails partially, because if you go to that location, that list will exist now. It's like it goes out and creates a list, but then it can't do the approvals part for some reason and connect that up. Because if you go in and, okay, the list is there. If I go and add an item, there is no submit for approval. We still have that, the Power Automate flow integration, so you can create something there, but it's not the same thing. So just let you know, if you have it already, then give it some tests, but for us, it didn't work. I look forward to it working and be able to test it out and really give a better opinion on the functionality. But so that should be, if you've got a test tenant that you have set to targeted, then you should be able to actually play with it this month, and hopefully it'll work for you.
Yeah, the piece that we wanted to see, Daniel, was when the request appears in the Approvals app of Teams, because that's a little empty at the moment.
Yeah.
Adobe Sign, a regular sort of standard approval, and something else. But it looks like there's going to be space for more of these types of approval templates or lists that use approval.
Yep, indeed. So be looking for that and play around with that. Hopefully, some of those kinks will be ironed out, and then you can sit there and do an approvals loop
all over again. That was well done.
Do you like that segue?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
We said we're going to drop that one in rehearsal.
Oh.
Anyway, the headline and the big news. Only like that, a lot of people have been waiting for the Loop app, and here's the first clue that it's coming very, very soon. Because you need to repair something for it in your tenant. Loop app coming to public preview. MC 525137. Okay, did that get your attention, admins? Maybe, if you're looking at the message center. And, well, what did you do with that attention? You read through the message. It recaps and says what is Loop and where to access it. So it will be accessed from loop.microsoft.com. It will be released to public preview in late March. Yes, finally, except not quite a date. That's apparently super secret. And it's going to be released as default off. Right, we don't see that often. We often see things that are default on to drive adoption. Why is it default off, and what might you have to do to turn it on? It's default off because there are a couple of things that are still not quite working in the compliance area or space. They have been highlighted about 6 months-ish ago, and there is some work going towards making that, to remediating that. So one thing about it is that if you are doing an e-discovery, gathering information for a case or some sort, that it will discover that content, but you can't view it offline. So you can take the content, a fluid file, but you'll have to upload it to a OneDrive to read that. So it's not a great experience for someone who's having to review the content. And there's an aspect around some of it not being able to search inside some of the Loop experience. So default off. You have to intentionally turn it on if you want to review this as an organization. I'll just highlight some of these things that we have to do, Daniel, but I did cover it off in a video. I've dropped the link in the description, so do check that out and fast forward to a couple of the key things that you may not have in place already. But yeah, if you're trying to enable it, there's a cloud policy service, which if I just quickly flick over to that, it is config.office.com, and when you go there, you can choose the Office policies. And I just want to go into one policy that I'd set up just to let you see where that is and what it looks like. That if we skip over to the policies part, there are 2,202 policies, wow, but easily you can find where the Loop ones are by typing in Loop. And the one that is new there that you'll need to enable to make sure that it is turned from default off to default on is create and view Loop files in Loop. That's that second one there. And that will do that. There's a few other things that you might have to do if you've already got like it turned off at the SharePoint and app level, if Loop is completely turned off in your environment. But they wanted to cover this off in this message so that if you are okay with its current state of compliance tools, and you want to just release it to maybe a small group of people within your organization, that it's a controlled way of doing that. You could take these actions and just add certain people to that policy rather than your whole organization. But yeah, okay, so that's all the technical stuff. But what was the massive impact, Daniel, of saying, hey, Loop app preview is coming?
Well, I think for me, it has been a long-awaited app to be released. We talked about it in a previous show about there was, and I think maybe it was the green room, but anyway, about, hey, there's they're going to, you can sign up for private preview, and then and had such an overwhelming response. I mean, just, I think a lot of people are really wanting to use it. And it's been promised for a really long time. That for me, it's just been, I've been waiting for this for a very long time. We've seen some Loop components, right? But not the app itself.
Yeah, just a preview of the app in terms of demonstrating at Ignite. But very few people have been able to get their hands on it until recently. We did cover in the green room that one of the product group was releasing a few private preview slots, which, if we're going to all have access to it, barring these steps in late March, then maybe the private preview access isn't that important. But yeah, plenty of questions like Andy's one, which, this is just one of many as we think about what does it mean for the Loop app. That when people compare it to other products, they also want to use it for personal knowledge management and productivity. So we'll see what that looks like at release, first release, and take it from there.
Yeah.
But
indeed.
all we can say is go through those steps before late March if you want to make it available to a few people or to all of your organization, and check out the video for the steps if you want to follow along that way. And our next message, Daniel, is
Viva.
We're bringing Viva back in.
We're making, no, never mind. I was going to make a joke. Microsoft Viva Connections customer-facing analytics. I love that A word. MC426126. And I say I love analytics because it is often requested I want to know what the impact is. I want to know how people are using whatever we're talking about, in this case, Viva Connections. And so we're going to have some insights into the how people are experiencing connections, including one that I find to be the most frequently asked for, which is, how are people utilizing our home site? Are they coming through Teams, or are they coming through the browser, meaning SharePoint? And to understand how that flow works, because without that, I don't know if my rollout of Viva Connections via Teams is successful or not. I have no clue, right? So this message is about how the analytics is coming. And so for any user that is a member of the site, so if you have basically contribute up permissions, you'll be able to see this on your home site. Now, what would have been really great on this message is pictures, because, analytics is all about, getting insights and understanding what's going on. However, if you click the additional information, you will get that information. Now, the Viva Connections analytics can be turned off if you really want to. You can do that, and in the message, there's instructions. Now, how do you access these analytics? Well, you'll go to the settings and then manage Viva Connections. So on your home site, you'll go to the settings gear icon and then analytics will be right there on, and Daryl's showing it for those on the video podcast. You'll see that you can click view report. Now, let's throw some caution onto your expectations. Okay. This is V1, and they're pretty clear about this in what's in the usage report. This is not a wonderful experience when you think about the SharePoint analytics that you get now with nice graphs, and it's all laid out on the page really well, and it's on the page itself. This is giving you a CSV that has the information in it. Well, it's actually it's not a CSV because it has different tabs. So it's going to be a workbook that has it's all in text, right? So if you want to create your visuals, you can from that, your charts and all of that. So that's great, but it is. Of course, you get that information, but there's another key here, and that is it's only up to 28 days of usage data. Bum, bum, bum. So, what does this mean? This means that this is not a holistic approach, not a way to get, I want to see in the past 90 days. I want to see in the past. You're not going to get that. So, what can you do, Daniel? Thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
Sorry, missed my cue.
You can go in there and download this every 28 days and somehow compile it, for your needs. Now, is that great? No, it is not a great experience, but you can compile this, and you might even get fancy with, maybe I can grab this information and throw it into a SharePoint folder and have Power BI do magic or something on it. The problem with all that is I'm hoping that by the time you get all of that working and fine-tuned and everything, hopefully V2 of this will come around and it'll be much better, and that work will not be really beneficial. Hopefully it'll be better. Now, I'm saying hopefully a lot because we don't know. I don't know how long it's going to be like this, but this is better than nothing, because I can go in and say, oh, look, our Teams adoption is huge. We have, 80% of the people using Viva connections through the Teams app and not going to the browser, or vice versa, or half an hour, whatever, right? I can get those insights. Now, this is not you're not tracking individual users here. This is aggregated, as you can see in the screenshot, when you go to the additional information on this message. It is just how many people you're getting for how many unique visits, users, how many total visits, and you're going to be able to see by platform and by experience. So great. I think that's good. Actually, I think I said great. It's not. It's good. And we'll look for it to improve.
I'll be interested to see the stats around dashboard visits versus feed versus resources. With the dashboard and feed being something you can add to a SharePoint page, your home site, for example, that you would expect if it's been set as your default homepage for your browsers, maybe that's going to be quite high versus resources. Breaking that down into how many people are actually visiting the feed from their mobile experience. And, if you aren't using that home site within Teams and you're using the new experience, which shows the Viva home site page thing, the landing page where you don't have control over it and it's there for you, then that's also going to show up there too. But yeah, good to have those analytics, and I expect to see it in the Viva admin page or admin center that they're building there.
I hope so in the future. Yeah. Absolutely. We have one more real quick. I'll go ahead and cover it if that's okay, or do you want to cover it?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Microsoft 365 roadmap updates, MC 526134. This is really, they're just tweaking the way they're presenting the information on the roadmap to say they're renaming GA, which is general availability, to rollout start. I think that's because people said, hey, you have GA listed as March, and here we are in April, and we still don't have it. Well, we've started the rollout in March, right? But they're also going to have that preview available, and you've probably been seeing that for a while. So that preview will become preview available, right? So I think that's just tweaking the language here, and it should be coming mid-March, so now-ish, through to the end of March. You'll start seeing that in the rollout on the roadmap.
I'm really looking forward to previewing the inbound support for DNSSEC/DANE for SMTP2 Exchange Online. Yep.
Wow.
Well, actually, it's already arrived. I've been previewing it for months.
Yes. So, anyway, want to let people know about those renames and how that's going to look from now on. So anyway,
Nice
thank
one.
you everyone for being here. This I hope that this was informative. Daryl, you have informed me greatly, and so I appreciate that and your insights on Loop and everything else too.
That makes me think of was it a Dr. Seuss movie? You have been warned.
Okay.
You have been informed. And then Danny DeVito walks up. Yes. All right. Well, that's it for the week. That's it for the bad jokes. Although, if you do have a dad, expect more for the week. And we'll see you again next week. You know where to find us. You know what to do. 365 MCS on all the socials, everywhere. Bye bye.